Hello, everyone. Welcome to Pod Health, the secret truth doctors don't want you to know. Get ready to discover the most shocking and hidden secrets in medicine, things that have been deliberately hidden from you. We will expose what is being hidden and transform the way the world views health. Your life could be the next to change radically. Join us in this revolution now.
Ever feel like sometimes conventional medical advice is kind of just scratching the surface? Especially when it comes to how powerful nutrition can be.
Yeah.
So we're going to unpack some pretty interesting ideas from Dr. Eric Berg, DC, who straight up says medicine lies to you. Now, before anyone freaks out, we're going to dive into 9 common medical myths that he really pushes back on. And we're going to see how food, might be playing a way bigger role in our health than we've been told.
It's interesting, Dr. Berg, he's not saying doctors are out here trying to trick people, right?
Right.
He's saying there's this systemic gap in how the medical system handles nutrition.
Interesting.
Even points to, he's got this huge biochemistry textbook, and he's saying there's barely anything in here that's like a deep dive on nutrients.
That's a pretty big statement to make. So if medical professionals aren't being given this full picture of nutrition, like when they're learning, how does that change the type of healthcare that we get?
It's a really good question. And Dr. Berg, he thinks this whole lack of focus on nutrition, it comes from, big pharma.
Oh, wow.
But also, even the junk food industry's influence on our medical system.
Okay, now that's a pretty controversial link to make. But it does make you think, doesn't it, about what role these industries play in shaping our healthcare.
Yeah, for sure. It definitely adds a whole other dimension to this conversation. One of the first myths that Dr. Berg goes after, he says the gallbladder, we don't need it.
Yeah, I've heard that too. But I thought the gallbladder's important, right? It helps us digest.
Exactly. I mean, sure, you can technically live without it, but your gallbladder, it stores bile salts, right?
Yeah.
And those are super important for breaking down fat. So Dr. Berg, he suggests that if you've had your gallbladder removed, taking bile salt supplements after you eat could really help with your fat digestion.
So it's not just about survival, it's about actually thriving, right?
Exactly. And he talks about these long-term things that can happen if you have your gallbladder removed. People don't always think about those. Things like, problems digesting or absorbing nutrients properly.
Okay, yeah.
Now, let's switch gears for a sec. Here's a hot topic. Dr. Berg says that statins have minimal side effects is just not true.
Now, this is a big one. I know a lot of people, they're taking statins to try to lower their cholesterol. So what's he concerned about?
He's basically saying statins are harmless, no way. He brings up things like muscle problems, higher risk of type 2 diabetes, could even mess with your liver.
Wow, those are serious side effects to think about. Sounds like he doesn't agree with how widely statins are used, especially when doctors are prescribing them to people who are older, just as a way to prevent problems.
Right. He's saying cholesterol isn't automatically bad for you. It's needed to make hormones, and it's part of how our cells work.
So it's about looking at the whole picture and not just focusing on one single number, huh?
Exactly. And on the topic of oversimplifying things, Dr. Berg tackles this idea that salt is the main cause of hypertension.
Oh, yeah. We've all heard that. Cut the salt to lower your blood pressure, right?
Right. But Dr. Berg, he's saying potassium, that's actually way more important for regulating blood pressure than salt is.
Really? Does he back that up with anything?
Yeah, he talks about research that shows how potassium helps manage blood pressure, and he even mentions some people, their sleep gets better if they have some salt before bed because of how it affects cortisol, that stress hormone.
So maybe salt isn't the enemy we think it is.
Looks like there's more to the story. He wants us to move past these simple cause and effect ideas and really get into how different nutrients in our body all work together.
That makes sense. So what about vitamin D? I've heard different things about how much we actually need. He calls out the myth that low vitamin D dosage is sufficient.
Yeah, he says you need at least 10,000 IUs daily. That's way higher than the 600, 800 IUs you usually hear about.
Wow, that's a huge difference. I know some people might be thinking, hold on, won't that much vitamin D be toxic? Does he talk about that?
He does. He explains those international units, the IUs, they're not a direct measurement of weight or size, right?
Okay.
And we can naturally get 20,000 IUs if we're out in the sun for, say, 40 minutes in the summer.
So he's saying we need a lot more than what's normally suggested. It's interesting. He's framing it like this is closer to what our bodies are used to getting from the sun.
Exactly. Another food myth he tackles. Red meat is unhealthy.
Oh, that's always a debate.
Yeah.
I know red meat gets a bad rep, but it sounds like Dr. Berg sees it differently.
He's all about grass-fed red meat. He talks about how nutritious it is, all the protein, the B vitamins, zinc, selenium, whole bunch of good stuff.
So it's not all red meat that's bad, it's more about the quality and where it comes from. He's separating that from processed meats.
You got it. He's saying make smart choices about what you're eating, pay attention to quality and where the food comes from instead of just blanket statements.
I like that. It's about the details. Right. All right, ready for a myth that might surprise you. He says, saturated fat is bad, is just not true.
Yeah, another one of those beliefs that's stuck around. He's saying unsaturated fats, especially the oils from seeds that are in a lot of processed foods, those might actually be worse for us.
Really? That goes against so much of what we've heard about fats.
I know, right? That's why he's encouraging us to really look closely at food labels and understand what types of fat we're actually putting in our bodies.
So he's saying don't worry so much about saturated fat. It's the unsaturated fats, especially from those seed oils, we need to watch out for. This is really interesting.
Definitely makes you stop and think about what healthy fat really means. Let's talk about this myth. Weight is the cause of health problems.
I think this one resonates with a lot of people. We're told, lose weight, get healthy. But it sounds like Dr. Berg has a different opinion.
He's arguing weight is often a symptom of other issues, like insulin resistance, not the root cause itself. And just focusing on losing weight without tackling those underlying problems, he thinks that can actually backfire.
So instead of just trying to lose weight, he's saying we should focus on getting healthy first.
It's like weight is a sign telling us something's not balanced in our body. And he suggests a lot of times that imbalance comes from the food we eat and how we live our lives.
I like that way of thinking. Instead of fighting against weight, we can see it as a clue, showing us what we can work on.
It's all about addressing the root cause, not just the symptoms. Now, plant-based diets are huge right now. Dr. Berg says plant-based options are always healthier is another myth.
Yeah, this one feels very relevant. Everywhere you look, plant-based is trendy. But it sounds like Dr. Berg might disagree.
He's warning us about thinking plant-based automatically means it's good for you. A lot of those meat alternatives made from plants, they're super processed, often have hidden sugars and ingredients that aren't that healthy.
So just because it says plant-based on the package doesn't mean it's good for you.
Exactly. Another reminder to read those ingredient lists carefully and not just believe the marketing hype.
Great advice. Okay, the last myth we'll talk about here might sound a little confusing at first. Dr. Berg takes on this idea that hypoglycemia is a complication of diabetes.
Yeah, that doesn't quite make sense. How can low blood sugar be a complication of high blood sugar?
I'm curious to hear how he explains that one.
He gets into how insulin works, and he's saying having too much insulin, which often happens when people eat too many carbs, that can lead to hypoglycemia even if someone doesn't have diabetes. And he points out how ironic it is that we treat low blood sugar with sugary things or glucose pills, but then at the same time, people are taking meds to lower their blood sugar.
So it sounds like he's pointing out a disconnect in how we're treating blood sugar problems and what's actually causing them in the first place.
Exactly. He's emphasizing that to get your blood sugar stable, you have to address the root cause, and a lot of times that involves changing your diet.
It's about going deeper than just the quick fix. We've covered a lot of ground here. These are just some of the myths Dr. Berg is challenging, and they all seem to have a common thread running through them.
Right. It's all about questioning what we've been told and realizing that food could be playing a much bigger role in our healthcare journey than we thought.
This whole deep dive is making me think about how important it is to really take control of my own health, not just rely on one source of information. What's standing out to you so far?
You know, it's this idea that keeps coming up. Our bodies are complex. And if we're going to deal with health issues, we need to take a more holistic approach, not just treat symptoms with medication.
Yeah, so we've almost been trained to think about healthcare as just like a bunch of quick fixes instead of really getting down to what's causing the symptoms.
Right. It's almost like food and medicine have become totally separate things when they're really so connected.
Exactly. And Dr. Berg seems to be pushing for this idea where doctors and patients are actually having real conversations about how food impacts our overall well-being.
Which brings us back to that point he made about how nutrition isn't really taught that well in medical schools.
Right. If doctors aren't getting a good grasp of nutrition while they're training, how can they really help their patients make healthier food choices?
Yeah, that's a big question. He seems to be suggesting that we need a completely different approach to how we teach healthcare. one that goes way beyond just writing prescriptions.
So what can we do about this? It's easy to talk about the problems, but how do we actually change the system?
Well, I think awareness is a huge first step. Just by questioning these old ideas and looking at different viewpoints, like what Dr. Berg is saying, we can start to change the conversation around health and wellness.
It's about becoming more proactive, right?
Huh.
Asking questions and really standing up for our own health.
Exactly. And it's about having those open conversations with our doctors where we talk about nutrition as a key part of getting better and staying healthy.
Instead of this us versus them mentality, it's about patients and doctors working together to create a system that values both conventional treatment and a holistic food-first approach.
Yeah, it's about finding that balance where science-based medicine and personalized nutrition meet, where the goal isn't just treating diseases, but actually promoting true health and well-being.
Which reminds me of what Dr. Berg said about needing more research to really understand how nutrients impact our health.
He's pushing for a much deeper exploration of the science of nutrition, going beyond these basic dietary guidelines to understand all the intricate ways that food interacts with each of our unique bodies.
It's a field that's always changing, and it's clear there's still a lot we don't know.
But by staying curious, questioning what we've been told, and being open to new information, we can become more informed advocates for our own health.
Right. And hopefully we can help create a more holistic and empowering approach to healthcare.
That's the goal. So for those of you listening, what does this all mean for you? How can you actually use this information in your own life?
It's about taking control of your health journey and not being afraid to question things.
Start by becoming aware of these myths and really examining those assumptions we've been taught about health and wellness.
Do your own research, talk to your doctors, explore different ideas, and find what works for you.
Remember, you are your own best advocate when it comes to your health. Don't be afraid to speak up, ask questions, and make choices that match your own values and goals.
And if you're interested in learning more about Dr. Berg's approach, I definitely recommend checking out his work. He's got a ton of information out there about nutrition and functional medicine.
He's definitely passionate about sharing what he knows and challenging conventional wisdom. And even if you don't agree with everything he says, it's definitely engaging content.
It's all about getting you to think critically and making informed decisions about your health and well-being.
And that's what we're all about here on The Deep Dive.
So, as we wrap up this exploration of medical myths and the power of nutrition,
We want to leave you with one final thought to consider.
if nutrition really is the foundation of health, what are some small steps you can take today to nourish your body and prioritize your well-being?
Maybe it's just choosing a piece of fruit instead of that processed snack, adding an extra serving of veggies to your dinner, or taking a few minutes to learn about what's actually in your favorite foods.
Remember, it's not about being perfect. It's about making progress, one step at a time.
Here's to questioning, exploring, and taking charge of our health journey.
Yeah, it's those small changes we make day to day that can add up to big results over time.
Absolutely. And you might even find yourself as you're starting to build those healthy habits, starting to question some of the conventional medical advice you're getting.
It's like Dr. Berg's work is encouraging us to not just sit back and accept whatever treatment we're given, but to actually become active participants in our own healthcare.
Right. It's about being informed and advocating for ourselves.
And sometimes that means, having those tough conversations with our doctors, maybe about trying different approaches or thinking about how nutrition fits in alongside those traditional treatments.
It's not that conventional medicine is wrong. It's just that maybe there's more to the story of what makes us truly healthy.
Yeah, and realizing that food can be such a powerful tool, both to prevent and to manage health problems.
And imagine, as research keeps going, how much more we'll learn about that link between food and health.
It's exciting to think about all the new discoveries that are out there and how, understanding nutrition better could really help us live healthier lives.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into what Dr. Berg has to say, some of it pretty thought-provoking.
Yeah.
We just want to encourage you, keep questioning, keep exploring, keep looking for information that makes sense to you.
And remember, your health, it's a journey, not a finish line.
Exactly.
And you have the power to make those choices that support your well-being every step of the way.
Until next time, keep diving deep.